Once upon a time in a small village, there lived a young boy named Kwame. He shared a humble home with his mother and older sister. Their house, a modest two-story structure, had been built by his father, who had worked tirelessly in a local trade. Tragically, his father passed away unexpectedly 5 years ago at the age of 40, leaving the family in a difficult situation. His sudden loss created a void that was hard to fill. Kwame's mother, only 30 at the time, found herself alone and struggling to care for her children. The grief of losing her husband was immense, but the financial burden weighed even heavier on her shoulders. The company where Kwame's father had worked provided them with a small sum of 200,000 cedis, which was hardly enough to sustain them for long. Sadly, none of their relatives or friends offered any assistance. In times of hardship, it often feels like even family can become distant, and that was exactly what happened. Once surrounded by loved ones, Kwame's family now felt isolated. Everyone continued with their lives, and no one checked in on them. Kwame's mother, who had always been a caring and devoted wife, now had to take on the unfamiliar role of the sole provider. She spent her days in sorrow and her nights worrying about how to feed her children. Despite her best efforts, the money her husband left was quickly running out. As time passed, the financial strain became unbearable. They struggled to pay bills, and food was becoming scarce. Kwame's mother did everything she could to save money. She cut expenses, sold whatever little they had, and tried to make the best of their situation. But even with all her sacrifices, the money was gone within 10 months. With no other options left, Kwame's mother made a tough decision. She would have to leave their home and find work to support her children. As she ventured out into the world, she faced the harsh reality of being a woman alone, trying to provide for two kids. She first found a job as a cleaner in a household. The pay was minimal, but it was a start. She continued searching and soon managed to secure two more cleaning jobs. With three jobs, she earned a total of 1,200 cedis a month, which was barely enough to cover their daily needs. Kwame's mother persevered, but even with this small income, life remained challenging. Bills had to be paid, rent had to be covered, and the children's needs had to be met. The pressure was immense. Half of her income went towards sending Kwame and his sister to school and buying them small necessities, leaving her with very little to survive on. Kwame, on the other hand, was doing his best to concentrate on his studies despite the constant worry about food and money at home. He tried not to let it affect his education, but soon the weight of hunger and stress began to take a toll on him. For 2 days, Kwame hadn't eaten anything. His body grew weak, and he struggled to focus. His stomach ached, and he felt drained. He drank only water to keep himself going, hoping it would provide some relief. Yet as he sat in class, he felt his energy fading away, his vision blurring, and everything around him seemed to be slipping into darkness. Kwame's teacher, Mr. Abena, noticed the change in him. He saw the pale, weak boy struggling to stay awake and wondered what was wrong. Concerned, he approached Kwame and gently asked, "What's wrong with you, Kwame? Are you feeling okay?" Kwame, with great difficulty, opened his eyes and replied, "Yes, sir, I'm fine." Mr. Abana wasn't convinced. He could see that Kwame was far from fine, so he insisted, "Tell me what's really going on. You don't look okay." Kwame hesitated, but after a few moments, he admitted, "We have no food at home. We haven't eaten for 2 days. I'm not feeling well." Mr. Abina's heart sank upon hearing this. He could see how much Kwame was suffering. Without a second thought, he stood up, guided Kwame to the staff room, and immediately asked the school's caretaker to go to the market. Mr. Abena handed him some money and said, "Quickly bring something for Kwame to eat." The caretaker rushed to the market and within minutes returned with a sandwich and a cold drink. Mr. Abena handed the food to Kwame and said, "Here, eat this. You need to regain your strength." Kwame hesitated at first, but the moment he bit into the sandwich and drank the cold drink, he began to feel better. His head cleared and he felt energy slowly returning to his body. His vision, once clouded, now seemed clear, and for the first time in days, Kwame felt something resembling normalcy. Mr. Abena, still worried but relieved to see Kwame improving, asked, "How do you feel now?" Kwame nodded weakly, his face finally showing a sign of relief. "I'm better, sir. Thank you." Mr. Abena smiled warmly. Good. Now go back to class, and after school, I want you to come see me in my office. As the school bell rang for the end of the day, Kwame walked toward Mr. Abena's office, still feeling a bit weak but now able to think clearly. When he arrived, Mr. Abena was waiting for him. "Don't worry, Kwame, I'm going to help you," he said as he stood up, took Kwame by the shoulder, and walked him to his bicycle. "Come on, I'll take you to the market." Mr. Abena rode his bike with Kwame behind him, and together they went to the market. Mr. Abena bought everything Kwame's family needed: flour, rice, lentils, sugar, and other essentials. He didn't stop there. He took the groceries directly to Kwame's home. When they arrived, Kwame's mother wasn't there yet. She worked late into the night cleaning houses, often returning home in the early hours of the morning. Mr. Abena placed the groceries in the kitchen and then turned to Kwame. "Don't worry about anything now. From now on, I will make sure your family has everything they need. I'll bring food every month so you can focus on your studies and not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from." Kwame felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. He had never imagined that someone outside his family would care so much. Mr. Abena's kindness was like a beacon of light in the darkest time of his life. Before leaving, Mr. Abena turned to Kwame and said, "I know things are tough right now, but focus on your education. It's the key to a better future. I'll make sure the rest is taken care of." Mr. Abena's intervention was not a one-time gesture. He kept his promise to Kwame and his family. Every month, without fail, Mr. Abena would send groceries to their home. Kwame's mother couldn't believe the kindness of this man, who was not even a close relative. Despite his modest salary, Mr. Abena continued to help without ever asking for anything in return. He often visited Kwame's house, ensuring that the family had enough food to get through the month. The support Mr. Abena provided didn't stop at just food. One day when Kwame's mother came home, she was surprised to see a full kitchen with all the necessary groceries stocked up. She asked in disbelief, "How did all this get here?" Kwame, who was sitting nearby, explained, "It was Mr. Abena. He's been sending these groceries every month. He even spoke to the school administration and got my 3 months of unpaid wages waived." Upon hearing this, Kwame's mother broke down in tears. She couldn't believe that someone who had no obligation to them would go so far to help. Mr. Abena's selflessness overwhelmed her, and she prayed for his well-being, thankful for the immense help he had provided during their most difficult times. Mr. Abena's actions went beyond what most people would do. He took a real interest in Kwame's future. He knew that the only way Kwame and his family could escape poverty was through education. Mr. Abena encouraged Kwame to focus solely on his studies and promised that he would always be there for him. Despite the hardship, Kwame's mother was incredibly grateful, but she couldn't help but feel guilty that she wasn't able to repay Mr. Abena for his kindness. However, Mr. Abena, always humble, assured her, "You don't need to thank me. You can consider me your brother. Helping you is the least I can do. You and Kwame are like family to me." While Kwame's mother worked tirelessly to make ends meet, Mr. Abena's regular support ensured that they never had to worry about food again. Over time, Kwame's mother felt a sense of peace knowing that someone cared for them and that her children would not go hungry. As the months passed, Kwame focused on his studies with renewed determination. He became more and more motivated to succeed, inspired by Mr. Abena's selfless help. Kwame began to dream of a better life, a life where he could repay his teacher for everything Mr. Abena had done for him. Despite all the struggles, Kwame's schoolwork improved. He worked diligently and began to excel in his classes. His teachers noticed the change in him. The weak, distracted boy who had once struggled to stay awake was now attentive, focused, and full of hope. But Mr. Abena's influence didn't just stop at providing groceries or tuition fees. He had instilled in Kwame the belief that no matter how difficult life became, education would always be the key to overcoming obstacles. Kwame believed that if he worked hard enough, he could change his life and, in turn, help others just as Mr. Abena had helped him. Mr. Abena's impact on Kwame was immeasurable. He was not only a teacher, but also a mentor, a guiding light in the darkest time of Kwame's life. The lessons he imparted went beyond the classroom and into the heart of Kwame's life journey. Kwame, now with the courage to dream of a better future, focused entirely on his education. He knew that someday he would repay Mr. Abana in the best way possible by becoming successful and helping others in the same way. Time passed, and Kwame's life began to change in ways he had never imagined. With Mr. Abana's unwavering support, Kwame was able to focus entirely on his studies. He poured his heart and soul into learning, never forgetting the sacrifices his mother had made and the kindness Mr. Abana had shown him. He worked harder than ever before, knowing that this was his chance to build a better future for himself and his family. One day, Kwame received the news he had been dreaming of. He had been awarded a scholarship to study at a prestigious university abroad. The joy that filled his heart was indescribable. It was as if all the hardships he and his family had endured were finally coming to an end. Kwame's mother and sister were overjoyed by the news. For the first time in years, they had something to celebrate. Kwame never imagined that he would one day be able to study overseas. It seemed like a far-off dream, something only the wealthy could achieve. But now that dream was within his reach. The university had sent him a ticket, and he was about to embark on a new chapter of his life. The day Kwame left for his studies abroad, his mother and sister stood by his side, both with tears in their eyes. Kwame hugged them tightly and promised that he would work hard to make them proud. As he boarded the plane, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. From a boy struggling to survive to a young man with a bright future ahead of him. After a long flight, Kwame finally landed in the new country. The university had arranged everything for him. His food, accommodation, and all his expenses were taken care of. Kwame was overwhelmed with gratitude. He knew that he was standing at the threshold of a new life, and it was all thanks to the support of people like Mr. Abana. Kwame settled into his new life, but he never forgot about his family back home. The scholarship not only covered his expenses, but also provided him with extra money, which he sent back to his mother every month. He knew she was still working hard to support herself and his sister, and he wanted to make sure they were taken care of. Kwame encouraged his mother to stop working as a cleaner, telling her that he could now support her. He wanted her to rest and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Kwame's life was finally beginning to turn around, and he felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility to take care of the family that had sacrificed so much for him. Over time, Kwame's financial situation improved even further. He secured a part-time job while studying, and the money he earned helped him send even more to his mother. His hard work paid off as he became more settled in his new life. His mother, who had once struggled to feed her children, now had the means to live a more comfortable life. She used the money Kwame sent to renovate their home, buying new furniture and making their house a real home. The family's life, which had once been filled with worry and hardship, was now filled with hope and promise. The relatives who had once ignored Kwame's family, the ones who never checked in on them when times were tough, suddenly began to appear at their doorstep. They came with smiles and offers of help, as if they had always been there. Kwame didn't hold any grudges, but he couldn't help but notice how quickly people's attitudes had changed now that his family was doing better. In the meantime, Kwame's sister finished her studies, and the family began to look forward to the future with excitement. Kwame's success had become a beacon of hope for them, and they all felt a sense of pride in his achievements. As the years went by, Kwame's hard work paid off in ways he could never have dreamed of. He successfully completed his degree and received a job offer from a prestigious company in Ghana. The offer was generous, with a starting salary that would have seemed unimaginable during his childhood. Kwame was overjoyed. It was a testament to all the sacrifices he and his family had made, and he felt immense pride in how far he had come. Before leaving for Ghana, Kwame went shopping for gifts for his mother and sister. He wanted to show them just how much they meant to him. The day he left was an emotional one. His mother held him tightly and kissed him on the forehead, her eyes filled with tears of joy. She had seen her son go from struggling to survive to becoming a successful young man with a bright future. It was a dream come true for both of them. Kwame's first day at his new job as a manager was overwhelming. As he sat at his desk, taking in his new position and the responsibility that came with it, he couldn't help but think of Mr. Abana. It was Mr. Abena who had given him the chance to succeed, who had helped him when he was at his lowest point. Without Mr. Abena's kindness and unwavering support, Kwame knew that none of this would have been possible. Mr. Abena had not only helped Kwame with food and tuition fees, but he had also instilled in him the belief that no matter how difficult life became, education would always be the key to overcoming adversity. Kwame owed everything he had to that one act of kindness. As Kwame sat at his desk, thinking of his teacher, he realized that he had to find Mr. Abena and express his gratitude. He immediately arranged for his office car to be sent and made his way to the school where Mr. Abena had once taught him. When he arrived, he learned that Mr. Abena had left the school a year ago. He couldn't stop himself from feeling a sense of urgency. He needed to find Mr. Abena and thank him properly. After some searching, Kwame managed to get Mr. Abena's address. He arrived at Mr. Abena's house with fruits and sweets, hoping to show his gratitude. When he saw Mr. Abena, he was shocked. Mr. Abena, once full of energy and vitality, now looked weak and frail. The teacher who had once helped him in his darkest hour was now in need of help himself. Mr. Abena had been tutoring to make ends meet, but the years had taken a toll on him. Kwame was deeply concerned. He immediately arranged for Mr. Abena to receive medical treatment and started sending food and supplies to his home every day. Kwame wanted to ensure that Mr. Abena and his family were well taken care of, just as Mr. Abena had done for him and his family when they were in need. Mr. Abena's health gradually improved, and he regained his strength. Kwame's mother, who had already developed a close bond with Mr. Abena's daughter, visited their house. Mr. Abena's daughter, who had been helping him with tutoring, was a bright young woman who had recently graduated. Kwame's mother took a liking to her, and soon Kwame's family proposed that she marry Kwame. Mr. Abena, seeing how his daughter was treated with respect and care by Kwame's family, happily agreed to the match. Mr. Abena, a man who had once been the one to offer help, now found himself in a position where he was being helped in return. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude to God for bringing Kwame into his life. Mr. Abena's kindness, which had been a seed planted so many years ago, had blossomed into a lifelong bond of love, respect, and mutual support. Kwame had become a successful man, not just because of his own efforts, but because of the incredible support he had received from Mr. Abena. He realized that the kindness he had received from Mr. Abena had made all the difference in his life. The teacher who had once been a guiding light in his darkest time had now become a part of his family. Kwame, with a heart full of gratitude, promised to continue Mr. Abena's legacy of helping others. He knew that someday he too would pass on the kindness that had been shown to him. In this way, the cycle of kindness, love, and support would continue, and others would be given the chance to change their lives just as he had.